I never thought I'd be the guy writing in a subreddit about how his wife betrayed him, but here I am. It all started a few days ago when I finally looked at my wife's phone for the first time in months. I'd been suspicious for a while, little things that didn't add up. She'd suddenly become secretive about her phone, always locking it when she went to the bathroom or slept in the guest room. I chalked it up to her being protective of her social media accounts, but deep down, I knew better. It was a quiet Saturday morning. I was sitting in the living room, the sun streaming through the blinds, feeling restless. I decided to check her messages. It was a stupid impulse, I admit, but I needed to know. I unlocked her phone and my stomach sank instantly. There were texts, dozens of them, with my best friend Mark. I saw the words, the emojis, stuff that made my blood run cold. They were planning something. "Hey, tonight's perfect. Can't wait," one message read. "Yeah, she's out of town for her mom's birthday," another claimed, but the timestamp was last weekend. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. I knew what I was seeing wasn't just friendly chatting. They were meeting. More than that, they'd been doing it in secret for a while. The messages were flirty, casual, but it was the tone that made my skin crawl, like they were sneaking around with excitement, like it was a game. I put the phone down. My hands were trembling. It felt like my chest was tightening, cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I looked around the house, the quiet, innocent house I thought I knew. The photo frames, the coffee mug I bought her last Christmas, the cozy blanket on the sofa, all of it suddenly felt fake. I couldn't breathe right. I was angry, confused, betrayed. I needed a plan. I couldn't confront her outright, at least not yet. I had to be smart. First, I'd gather more evidence. I didn't want to jump to conclusions without proof. But I knew what I'd seen. Mark and her in secret. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a full-blown affair. I started paying more attention. I found her hiding her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd always be evasive if I asked about her whereabouts or her calls. She'd say she was out shopping or visiting her mother, but her stories never quite lined up. Every time I pressed, she'd get defensive, snap back at me, or change the subject. One night I followed her. She was acting nervous, fidgeting with her keys, glancing over her shoulder. She left the house under the pretext of going to the grocery store. I waited until she was out of sight, then slipped on my coat and followed her. She drove to a small, secluded part of town, an area I'd never seen her go to before. I parked a few blocks away and watched her slip into a nondescript building. My stomach twisted and my palms grew clammy. It wasn't a grocery store. It was something else entirely. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was stacking up. She was meeting someone in secret, someone who wasn't me. My mind raced with possibilities, with the feeling of betrayal deepening like a scar. That's when I realized I needed to be careful. This wasn't just about catching her in a lie. It was about what I was going to do next. I couldn't let her get away with it, not after everything. I had to plan my revenge, but I had to do it right. I had to be smarter than her. I went home that night feeling like I was carrying a weight I couldn't shake. I was starting to see her in a new light, no longer the woman I married, but someone else entirely. Someone I didn't recognize. I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't the end. Not yet. And I was about to turn the tables on her. The next day I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to that building she entered last night, like a hawk obsessing over its prey. Every minute of daylight felt like a countdown to some inevitable confrontation. But I knew I couldn't act rashly. If I rushed in now, I might blow my cover, or worse, ruin my chances of catching her red-handed. I had to be patient. I had to plan carefully. I started by going through her messages again, taking screenshots of everything I found suspicious. I kept my phone close, making sure I didn't leave any trace of what I was doing. I wanted undeniable proof, something I could use to confront her with clarity and cold precision. I also made a mental list of what I knew so far: secret meetings, secret messages, evasiveness. But I needed more. That afternoon, I returned to the house and pretended to be normal. I made coffee, tried to act casual, but my heart was pounding in my chest. I kept my eyes peeled for any signs of guilt or nervousness. She was distant, distracted, like she was carrying a heavy secret. Every few minutes I caught her glancing at her phone or fidgeting with her bracelet, and my stomach clenched. Later that evening, she went to the guest room to call her mom, as she always did when she wanted privacy. I waited a few minutes, then quietly followed her. I peeked around the door frame and saw her clutching her phone, her face tense. I didn't want to scare her, but I needed to see more. I slipped my phone into the room, hidden behind a chair, and started recording her. Her voice was hushed, but I could hear her whispering to someone. I listened carefully and caught her saying, "It's almost time. Are you ready?" My jaw clenched. That's when I realized I had enough. The pieces were all there. I had the texts, the secret meetings, the nervousness. This wasn't just cheating. It was lying, deception, a betrayal that cut deep. I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't just confront her out of the blue. No, I wanted to catch her completely off guard, reveal my hand in a way she wouldn't expect. Over the next couple of days, I devised a plan. I set up a fake accidental discovery, an anonymous email with the screenshots I'd taken sent to her with a simple message. "I know, don't lie anymore." I knew she'd be curious and anxious about who sent it, so I wanted her to start sweating. At the same time, I kept surveillance on her, watching her reactions, gauging her guilty conscience. My plan was to give her enough rope to hang herself, so to speak. I'd make her believe I was totally in the dark, just waiting for her to slip up. Meanwhile, I prepared myself emotionally. I knew this was going to be ugly. I'd be confronting her with everything I had, and I was ready for the fallout. I was going to be the fool in this story anymore. One evening, she sat down across from me at the dining table, her face pale, eyes darting. She looked like she was about to cry or bolt. I kept my tone calm, even though my stomach was twisting in knots. "We need to talk," I said. "About last weekend, about you and Mark." Her eyes widened and she stiffened. She opened her mouth to speak, but I pressed on. "I saw the messages, the meetings, the lies. How long has this been going on?" Her lips trembled. She looked cornered, like a rat caught in a trap. She stammered something about it didn't mean anything, but I wasn't buying it. I'd seen enough. I had what I needed. The time for patience was over. I was going to make her regret ever crossing me. I could see the panic in her eyes, the way her hands trembled on the table. It was almost satisfying in a twisted way, knowing I finally had her cornered. But I didn't rush her. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal, to understand that her lies had consequences. I took a slow, deliberate breath and looked her straight in the face. "So tell me," I said calmly, "how long has this been going on? Since when have you been sneaking around with Mark?" Her voice was barely above a whisper and she looked like she was about to break. "It's not what you think," she muttered. "It was just a stupid mistake. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Her eyes begged me for mercy or understanding, but I had none left. "Stupid mistake, huh?" I shot back. "You're meeting him at our family cabin last weekend, don't you think I know that? You swore you were out of town for your mother's birthday. That was a lie, all of it." My voice was steady, but inside I felt a mixture of rage and disappointment bubbling up. She looked down, tears welling in her eyes. "Please, I didn't want to hurt you. It just happened. It was a mistake," she repeated, voice trembling, but her words didn't matter anymore. I'd heard enough lies. The trust I once had was shattered, and I knew I had to take control of the situation. "Fine," I said, voice cold. "If it was just a mistake, then maybe you'll listen to what I'm about to do." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small envelope I'd prepared earlier. Inside were the screenshots, the proof I'd collected. I slid it across the table to her. "Here's everything. I want you to understand you're not going to get away with this." Her eyes widened as she looked at the images of her messages, her secret meetings, her lies. I saw her shoulders slump, defeated. "You've ruined everything," she whispered. "I never wanted it to come to this." Her voice cracked and I felt that old anger surge again. I looked away for a moment, gathering myself. I knew I had to be careful. Revenge wasn't just about exposing her. It was about making her see the full extent of her betrayal. I had to give her a taste of what she'd lost, of the damage she'd done. But I also knew I couldn't let her off the hook too easily. So I said, "Since you're so honest now, maybe it's time I tell you what I've planned." Her eyes flickered with a mixture of fear and curiosity. I leaned forward, voice firm. "You're going to leave this house. You're going to pack your bags and go to your sister, and I'm going to take some time to think about what I want to do next." She looked like she wanted to argue, but the evidence was too damning. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I really am. But I didn't buy it. Sorry wasn't enough anymore. Not after what I'd uncovered." I stood up, feeling a strange sense of calm mixed with rage. "You have 30 minutes," I said. "Pack your things and leave. Don't come back until you're ready to face the consequences of your actions." I handed her a set of keys and a folder filled with her belongings. "This is over." As she gathered her stuff, I felt a strange sense of relief, but also a gnawing emptiness. I knew I'd made my decision, but I also knew this was just the beginning. The fallout was about to hit, and I wasn't sure how I'd feel once it did. But one thing was clear: I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I was done being betrayed, done being hurt. Now I just had to wait and see what she would do next. She didn't say much as she packed her bags. Her hands shook slightly and her eyes were red-rimmed, but she didn't argue. She just moved quickly, almost robotic, as if she was trying to escape the reality she'd created. I watched her silently, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. This wasn't the ending I'd imagined, but it was the one I could live with for now. Once she left, I locked the door behind her. The house suddenly felt too quiet, too empty. I flipped on the TV out of habit but couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying the last few hours, the confrontation, the evidence, her tears. I wondered what she was feeling now, somewhere in that other house she was staying in. Guilt? Regret? Or was she already planning her next move? I decided I needed to be strategic. Revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about making her see the damage she'd done and understand that she'd lost something real. I wasn't going to rush to cut her out completely. I needed her to feel the repercussions of her betrayal first. I wanted her to realize what she'd thrown away, what she'd lost. So I sat down and drafted a plan. First, I called my lawyer just to get the legal stuff in order. I wasn't planning a messy divorce just yet, but I wanted to make sure everything was clear. Assets, property, and especially the cabin. She had no claim to that anymore. I also set up a new email account, anonymous, to send her subtle hints that I knew more than I was letting on. Small things, just enough to keep her on edge without revealing my hand. Later that night, I went through her phone records again just to double-check. I saw the calls she'd made to Mark after I'd confronted her, more calls, more messages. I saved screenshots of those, too. I wasn't just going to let her move on. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, and I'd make sure she did. I also started researching ways to make her regret her decision. Not a typical revenge, nothing destructive, more like psychological games. Setting up a few fake social media profiles, some anonymous messages from different accounts, just enough to make her paranoid. I wanted her to feel watched, to question everything. I was planning to make her realize that her secret life was no longer a secret. The more I thought about it, the more confident I became. I'd exposed her lies. I had proof. I had leverage. Now I was going to use it to make her pay, in a way that wouldn't leave physical scars but would hit her where it hurt most, her pride and her peace of mind. I wanted her to realize she'd lost the trust of not just me, but herself. Over the next few days, I kept my distance. I didn't call or message her, but I kept tabs. Every move she made, every new message or call she received, I knew about it. I felt like a predator, waiting patiently for her to slip up again. The house was eerily silent, but inside I was plotting my next move, calm, cold, and ready. One afternoon, I received an unexpected email from an anonymous address. It contained a single photo, her at that cabin smiling with Mark, the same spot I'd seen her enter that night. Along with the photo was a message: "You're not as clever as you think, watch your back." My stomach clenched, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. She was scared. She knew I was onto her. That was the moment I realized I'd won the game of psychological chess. I didn't need to ruin her reputation or drag her through mud. I just needed to make her doubt herself. To let her know that I was always one step ahead, quietly watching, waiting. And so, I did just that. I kept her in the dark, letting her believe she still had control, but I was the one pulling the strings. The house was empty now, but I wasn't done. Not yet. The next move would be hers, and I was ready to see her squirm. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope. Every little thing she did, every call she received, every message she sent, I was monitoring. It was like living in a shadow world where I knew her secrets but pretended I didn't. I kept the fake profiles active, sending her subtle messages that she couldn't quite pin down. I wanted her to feel watched, paranoid, unsure of what was real and what wasn't. One evening she called me unexpectedly. Her voice was shaky, almost defensive. "Can we talk?" she asked. I kept my tone calm, even sure about what I already knew. I'd been waiting for this moment. "I just want to say I'm sorry," she started. "I know I screwed up. I was stupid and I didn't think about how it would hurt you. I never meant for it to get this bad." Her words sounded rehearsed, but I could hear the genuine remorse behind them. Or at least I wanted to believe that. "I don't know what you want from me," I replied, voice measured. "You lied and cheated. You betrayed everything we had. You think a sorry will fix that." I let a pause hang before I continued. "You've lost my trust. You're out of chances now." She hesitated, then said, "Please, just give me a chance to explain, to fix this." That was when I knew I had to do something more. I had to make her truly feel the loss. Not just threaten or scare her. Something real, something that would hurt her more than words could. The following day I made my move. I arranged for a friend of mine to deliver a small, inconspicuous package to her sister's house. It contained the evidence of her meeting, screenshots, messages, everything. I wanted her to find it, to realize her carefully constructed lies had crumbled, that I had everything. I also sent her a note. "You had your chance. Now it's time you reflect on what you've done." I knew she'd open it eventually. I knew she'd start feeling the weight of her betrayal more intensely once she saw the proof. I wanted her to understand she'd gone too far, that it wasn't just a mistake, it was a choice she'd have to live with. That evening she called again, panicked and crying. "I found it," she whispered, voice trembling. "What are you trying to do to me?" I could tell she was starting to crack, but I didn't soften. "I'm just holding you accountable," I said. "You lied, you cheated. You thought you could get away with it, but you're not that clever." I could hear her crying more now. "Please, I'll do anything, just don't ruin me." That's when I knew she was realizing she'd lost control. I'd given her enough rope and now she was dangling. I had made her see that her actions had consequences, that I wasn't going to be a fool anymore. I ended the call with a simple, "Take some time to think about what you want," then hung up. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. I wasn't proud of what I'd done, but I knew it was necessary. She needed to understand that her betrayal didn't just hurt me, it destroyed what little trust we had left. My plan was working. She was unraveling, and I was watching her fall apart from a safe distance. And all the while, I kept reminding myself, this was about reclaiming my dignity. It was about making her realize she'd lost more than just a marriage. She'd lost her respect, her integrity, and maybe even herself. Now I just had to wait and see how far she'd go to try to fix what she broke, or if she'd run from it altogether. The days dragged on, and I watched her from a distance, like a predator observing its prey, waiting for her to make her next move. The house was silent now, too quiet, and I started to feel the weight of everything I'd done settle in my chest. I didn't sleep well anymore. Every noise outside or inside the house made me jump, half expecting her to walk back through that door, begging for forgiveness or trying to lie her way out of what she'd made. One morning I decided it was time. I gathered all the evidence I'd collected, the screenshots, the texts, the emails, and printed copies. I put them in a folder, sealed it, and took it to my lawyer's office. It was the last step in reclaiming what she'd stolen from me, and I knew I wouldn't look back. Before leaving, I called her one last time. Her voice sounded tired, hollow. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "We can fix it, please, I love you," but I'd heard enough. I took a deep breath, and with steady resolve I said, "It's over. You had your chance and you threw it away. I'm done trusting you." Hanging up, I handed the folder to my lawyer, who looked at me with a mix of professional detachment and understanding. We agreed on the formal divorce papers, the custody arrangements, and a financial split that favored me, given everything she had hidden and lied about. I signed the papers, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with emptiness. This was the end of a chapter I never thought would end like this. Later that afternoon, I went back to the house alone. I unlocked the door, feeling the familiar weight of the keys in my hand. The place felt different, less like a home and more like a shrine to a love that had died long ago. I walked through each room, packing the last of her things. I didn't linger, didn't look back. I just focused on what I had to do, the final act. When I finished, I returned her keys to her sister's house, along with a note. This is over. I want nothing more to do with lies and betrayal. I sealed her belongings in a box, left it on the porch, and turned away for good. My mind was clear now. I'd done what I needed to do, and I was finally free. As I drove away from that house for the last time, I felt a strange sense of closure. The betrayal still stung, but I refused to let it define me. I had reclaimed my dignity and moved on. The pain would fade, and someday I'd find happiness again. The lesson I learned: trust is fragile, and sometimes you have to fight for your peace. Revenge isn't just about punishment, it's about taking back control, even when it feels impossible. In the end, I broke free from the lies, and that freedom was worth everything.